Wow, is it bright here today? I'm going to have a challenging time, I think, dealing with this infusion of light. But since I am a seasoned professional, we'll soldier on, and I will assimilate all of these uh, illuminating photons. Oh, look who's here! Speaking of illuminating, you got to get your daily dose of Miss Peachy. There she is, the Astro Weather cat. Yeah, here you go. Peaches, you've been studying at the paw of Jasper quite well all these years. Your Astro Weather skills are top notch. Top notch. One final sip of coffee before I go in and say howdy to y'all. Let's see the new next pod. Sweet thumbnail. Thanks, new next pod. Misbehaving too. Chat love the thumbnail. The thumbnail is very romantic, isn't it? A couple hand in hand, looking off into the vast distance of space, contemplating the infinite possibility of life above the pleasure dome. And they're not at all awed by the immensity of what is spread out before them. Let's see who else we have. Jackie Delario. It's sunny above freezing, and I have a new last-minute chair massage today. How does it get any better than this? It doesn't. Every moment has its own inherent beauty. Oli Kobe, good morning. Nothing beats stargazing with your favorite squid person. There you go. Amy, what's going on, Amy? Hey, back. Barbara Boots is with us. More in NYC. Everybody's taking out from the snow, it seems. Darlene, we'll catch you later, darling. Jam Chloe. Oh, your kitty Millie's being spayed. Let's bring Peachy into this. Peachy, will you say a prayer for Millie? You say a prayer for Millie. This little prayer. Here you go. She's praying for Millie. Millie, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. I was spayed. She says, get me down. I'm not a prop, motherfucker. Let's see. Your kitty will be fine, Jam Chloe. She will be fine. Perhaps in the immediate aftermath, a little uncomfortable, but ultimately she'll be fine. David Flores checking out from Jalisco. What's going on, David? Good to see you. Are there any fire horses in the chat? You guys need to assemble a team of fire horses. Vaporwave, what's going on? Katie Lane setting up the line. Cook, we like that. What kind of restaurant are we talking about there, Katie Lane? There she is, the lovely and talented one. Lucky to get that sunlight. Yeah, I feel the same. Thanks, Jess Green Sparks. Catherine Rosen. Hi, Catherine. Good to see you. The future's so bright. Yes, shades would be appropriate. Let's see. Who else we have? Kim Harvey. Hi, Kim. There she is, the great Sandra Wells. Hi, Sandra. Beta blockers. Ferris. Call Ferris. You were on my mind this week, Ferris. And then it went racing somewhere else. Good to see you. Josie's Jazzy Junk. You got a snoot of sun. I like that. And Boof. Hi, and Boof. Janine is here. I want coffee and sunlight this morning too. Well, I just vicariously had both. Well, the sunlight is still here. You can get it through my screen. Oh, the blue. Yes. I was trying to figure out today if it was going to be a blue day or a red day. And I went with a blue day. Jen Quincy. What's going on, Jen Quincy from Brooklyn? That's Jeffrey Epstein territory. Let's see. Makeda, Soul of Sheba. Now there's a name. I love that. Greetings, Makeda. H.M. Grant. Look, it's true. I went to the island, but only for the conversation. I got to put that up, man. That is so funny. I have found a website. Somebody has gone through. See, this is the beauty, right? Let's bring this into the astrological conversation here. Somebody has gone to the trouble of creating a Google search engine where you can type in, it's all the Epstein stuff, right? It's a basically, this is what you can do with a Google search engine, right? Like you can just put it across like your own website. So if somebody wanted to look for something on your website, you would use a Google client and it would just churn the results from your website. Thank you, Google. So somebody did this with all the Epstein emails, and you can type in anything, and then you'd have all these emails that would come up with the search term in the email. And I was playing with it this morning. You'd be surprised what comes up. Some of it is just drivel. Like not everything is salacious and explosive. Some of it's just kind of drivel. But then there's other stuff. It's like, whoa, really? There's this one email that I ran across. It was an exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and somebody else. And somebody asked Jeffrey Epstein if Donald Trump used cocaine. And Jeffrey Epstein said, yes. Take it for whatever it's worth. But yeah. Thank God for the internet. And thank God for Google tools. I'm sure Google is more than thrilled that somebody's been able to. You know, who shows up in the Epstein emails a lot is Deepak Chopra. Or as I called him years ago, Deep Pocket Chakra. I have never liked Deepak Chopra. Maybe for a minute when he was on PBS, I thought he was mildly interesting. I mean, for a minute. For a quick minute. And then after that, it was like, there's something about this guy that just, I'm not so sure about him. He seems like the magic Indian snake oil salesman. And then I started to run into people who either had direct contact with him or had like their partners, girlfriends, wives, mates, whatever, also work for him. And to a T, each one of them said that Deepak Chopra was a pretty horrible person. And this is in like the sort of the live setting, right? With the setting up of meetings and everything. He was just a real prick. And it doesn't surprise me at all. And then, as you know, for me, the litmus for almost anybody was during the housing, the derivatives crisis, which Jeffrey Epstein says it wasn't about derivatives. Of course, he has some grand cosmic speculation about the disconnected series of events that lead to a crisis. That's a big thing about the C. Bannon interview, by the way, that whole notion. and how a series of disconnected events begin to explain something that's occurred, but doesn't do a good enough job so that it is not a repeatable, solvable equation so that you can use that going into the future to predict things like markets. Anyway, Deepak Chopra shows up a lot in the emails. And I just remember like watching it, and then I started to see these pictures of Deepak Chopra doing like, these social ops, and it just seemed totally gratuitous in terms of his own cult of personality. Anyway, that's a guy that shows up a lot in the Jeffrey Epstein emails. Noam Chomsky had an ongoing. We're going to get into this over on 15 Minutes of Flame. We're going to finish up the Bannon thing. There's one thing that I didn't cover yesterday with Bannon, which was the most important part of it, and I'm saving that for today. And then I have some other background info on the relationship between the two of them. And then we'll catch up on a lot of these revelations that are happening still in real time. The entirety of the Epstein files and emails, etc., have not been released. So there's going to be another tranche that's coming. And as I talked a little bit about yesterday, the Aquarian effect of all of this. And it was a bipartisan effort between Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna. Like, if it wasn't for them and them being a thorn in the side of the current administration and forcing them to do this through the Department of Justice, this wouldn't have been happening. Right. So this gets into this whole discussion of all these planets in Aquarius and the pass through going from Pluto and Capricorn to Aquarius. And I'll tell you another thing, that this is probably a very uncomfortable conversation for most people to have. Although it's starting to get a bit more comfortable because people are getting over the stigma of being able to talk about things in a frank and honest way in public. And what's coming up is essentially how Jeffrey Epstein and his inner circle used the word goyim consistently in a lot of the emails, particularly when it came to finances, the manipulation of markets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not a very good look for the amount of noticing that's going on, especially over the last year. It only confirms a lot of quote unquote stereotypes and suspicions, but at the same time, it's very Aquarian. What can I say? I mean, the thing about Aquarius is that it's kind of raw and naked in its application of shocking expose. This is, I think, a critical thing to understand about Aquarius. It doesn't have any affiliation, right? I mean, you can get into sort of extreme versions. Like Aquarius can be a little extreme, and you get into extreme versions of it, pockets of it, at the far, fringe of either the left or the right. Like you can kind of, run into it there. But by and large, I mean, it is pretty like neutral in that regard. And the thing to remember about Aquarius is when you look at, and we've done this before, but the vast array of Aquarian personalities, you will find that there are equal parts radical on the right and equal parts radical on the left. You will find anarchic personalities. It's fascinating. Today's star of the day is right up that alley as well. And unusual, like whoever thought that this gal would go in this direction, but you don't know until you find out. So I feel like that's really kind of the message here. This is the big picture message, that truth doesn't give a fuck. It doesn't give a fuck like what religion you are, what race you are, what political affiliation you are. It doesn't, what sex you are. It doesn't care, right? And this is the shocking revelation that is underpinning this idea of truth. And what happens, right, if we go to the other sign or the opposite sign, which is Leo, right? And Leo, in its worst expression and manifestation, wants to control the flow of information, wants to control the truth, because it has an egoic relationship to not being exposed or not being open to a deeper revelation about its own experience and its own existence, right? So this is the push me pull you of this astrological axis, and both signs are fixed, right? So when it comes in and comes in hard, like a lightning bolt from Zeus on Mount Olympus, it can hit hard because it is devoid of any kind of egoic representation. I mean, this is how theoretically Aquarius in its most pure form works. It doesn't play favorites. And in that regard, it has an interesting relationship with Sagittarius, right? Has an angular relationship with Sagittarius in the sextile form. So it's able to tap into that, right? And it has another angular relationship with a trine with Libra, which brings balance theoretically to the equation and the discussion. So this is one of the things that's happening, right? Because I don't think there's any group inside of the Epstein files that are not being offended, right? Apparently, there's even one where he sees P. Diddy as competition, right? And it's like, yeah, I could kind of see that, right? P. Diddy's got his own little extortion ring going on, right? It's like, oh, now we're getting into the hip hop world, and now we're getting into theoretical black hip hop privilege. Again, it's Aquarian, right? It has no investment in protecting any class. It's the way it is. And this is what we're witnessing right before our very eyes. And sometimes it's very difficult for people to understand where they are in a historical moment because we don't have the objectivity. But if we just step back for a second, as this flood of information coming through the internet, which is an Aquarian medium, is coming at us, and we're having to kind of sort through it and find the salient points and either comment on them or make memes out of them or make fun out of them, right? It's like we're living the moment now, and it's not going away. It's not going. Let me just say, and I was talking about when all these planets were going to pass through Pluto, that the world would be a different place, right? That we would have this collective Aquarian event. And this is it. It is happening now. And I don't think the world is going to be the same place. It's not going to be the same after this. Now, you may say to yourself, well, when are people going to get arrested? People are self-arresting. I forget the guy's name. He's a major lawyer for a New York law firm. Brad, what's his last name? He just resigned from his freaking law firm. Well, here, let me rephrase that. He resigned as a partner. He'll still have client relationships, which means that he won't be completely out of a gig, but he's had to take his name off of the mantle, right, of his law firm that he works for. It's a pretty prestigious law firm. And it's because of his repeated emails and mentions in these Epstein drops. So that's one, right? And there's more that's coming. I mean, did you see, this whole thing with Peter Thiel and how Peter Thiel was on the Rogan show, and everything that Peter Thiel said on the Rogan show now comes out as a lie, right? I mean, this is the amazing thing that we're witnessing. Yesterday it was Bill Gates. A couple of days ago it was Lawrence Tisch, who was the co-owner of the New York Giants. Now he's being investigated by Roger Goodell. And normally Lawrence Tisch would be rolling out to Santa Clara this weekend and hanging out and being a big deal at the Super Bowl. Like, do you think that guy's going? And if he goes, do you think he's going to have a really public profile? The answer to that is patently no. Right. So the thing is, this is the thing, right? People may not be tried and go to jail, but in the court of public opinion, they're going to start dropping like flies. And I know that there are some people who say, well, when this is all over and done with, things are going to go back to being the same, whatever the same was. I don't really agree with that. I mean, the other thing too, and I'm going to get into more of this on the show over on Rumble, which the link is there in the description. The potential blowback and the immediacy of creating another distraction to change the conversation. That's like stage left. It's hanging out stage left. Whether it's Iran or whether it's Bitcoin tumbling to, what is it, like 60K, when it was over 100, right? You lost 40,000 on your Bitcoin, or the price of silver tumbling, or the announcement by the government that on February 16th, a mere 11 days from now, the terms and conditions around buying silver are going to become much more limited. There are things that are floating out there that, they're there to ultimately distract us and take our eyes off of what is unfolding. But again, from an Aquarian sense, even when that is done, right, there are unintended consequences. And it's kind of like it's kind of like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Every time the Sorcerer's Apprentice fucks up and tries to fix the fuck up by doing some kind of magical act to counteract the bad magical act that it already had done, it fucks up even more, right? And we're kind of in that period now. So for everybody out there who can get depressed and jaded and cynical about how nothing ever comes to fruition, nobody ever goes to jail, things are just going to be business as usual, that we stand no chance against the onslaught of the elite and AI and the depopulation programs and all the dark stuff that we entertain from time to time. Just remember that the best laid plans under Pluto and Aquarius, they don't come to fruition. And even when they are initiated, right, when they're initiated and they're set into motion, they don't work the way that the people who have spent hours and hours and hours and hours going into game theory and algorithmic outcomes, they don't get everything, right? They just don't get everything. And the atmosphere now is that it all gets weirdly inverted or twisted or strangely hilarious in some ways, right? There is kind of a really dark humor, watching a video of Ben Shapiro, shoot his mouth off against Jeffrey Epstein and how it's just a big nothing burger. And all of a sudden the emails come around and it's like, well, Ben, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And it's kind of laughable at that point. You have to chuckle. And then the people that come out and try to defend this stuff, not defend the actual unspooling of the content, but like, oh, well, that's he was just going there every month for 3 years just to have dinners. Jeffrey Epstein was such a great dinner guest, and he always picked the best restaurants. That's why I went. Other than that, I really regret and they all say that, right? Watching Peter Thiel, oh, I really regret my relationship. And it's like, what? And this is the egoic part, man. This is the Leo side of the equation. Peter Thiel has more fucking money than everybody in this chat together, unless there's somebody in this chat that has a shit ton of money. If you do, please drop me a fat cup of coffee. Times 100. Like, Peter Thiel is filthy rich, and yet he is still cavorting with Jeffrey Epstein. And when asked why, Leo Joe Rogan said, who asked Peter Thiel is really weird this way. Like, Peter Thiel is one of these guys. If you ever got Peter Thiel in like a witness program under a hot lamp, he would melt like a dollar store candle. I swear to God. I mean, he almost does it when he's on TV, right, or on video or on the computer. The sweat just starts to, pool off this guy. And Peter Thiel comes right out and says, he was noted as being one of the foremost tax experts in the world. And I was Peter Thiel's basically saying, yeah, I went to see the guy so I can protect more of my money, right? So I can get on board one of his offshore tax havens in the Virgin Islands, and then we'll create a nonprofit. So it looks like the nonprofit is if you investigate it, it's just a nonprofit in the Virgin Islands, which is almost untouchable anyway. And Peter Thiel's coming flat out and telling us, hey, I've got a shit ton of money and I'm there to have a meeting with him so I can have more of it and do more nefarious acts in the world with all my money and power. So they're telling you, right? They're telling us, and this is the beauty of this moment. And take it in, right? Take it in. This is not orange jumpsuits and handcuffs, but it's almost as good, because the public perception of these people in the short term and in the immediate and perhaps even in the long term, is we look back on it, provided we don't have a Men in Black memory wipe and a reset, will not be kind to these people. Like, will not be kind. And some of them still have an element of shame, believe it or not. They still have an element of shame. And they are now fully engaged in the public walk of shame. And for all I can tell, it's just getting started. The Epstein, the thing about Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm going to move on to the chart of the moment and stuff. But the thing about Jeffrey Epstein, who is an Aquarian, remember that? He's an Aquarian. And his son, right? His son, and I think one of the things that the big takeaway around all of this is that this motherfucker is still alive, right? And if you've been watching these streams, I've talked about Epstein since 2016 when the Little Black Book came out. And when he so-called unalived himself, right? I'm looking at it like, this guy's not gone. This is just fishy as fuck, right? They extracted him. He is somewhere else. Now that's coming out. So the reason I bring this up is because if he's still alive, which I think many of us can agree upon, then this Pluto conjunction with Jeffrey Epstein's son is even more amplified in terms of everything, because not only are these planets that we've been tracing, and they're still there, by the way, they're just moving more towards the end of Aquarius. Not only did they have to go through Pluto, they had to go through Jeffrey Epstein's son as well. So here we go. This is the procession. This is the Aquarian parade that we've been witnessing, and what a display, what a spectacle it has become. And for all of you people out there, all you little folk out there watching these so-called untouchables squirm, this is great entertainment. And not only is it great entertainment, but the far-reaching effects, and this gets back to what I was trying to get to before I got sort of sidetracked by the astrology of it, is that Jeffrey Epstein had his reach. You go through the emails, his reach, the only thing I can tell is that he wasn't, and again, I haven't gone through, I barely scratched the surface of the emails. I'm not sure how connected he was to the world of sports, but music, politics, science, law, acting, like Johnny Depp comes up in the emails, like they want to get him to the island. Johnny Depp's got his own island down in the Caribbean. It's the reach of Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm sure when he was at the top of his game, that he was very proud of his reach, that he could just open his Rolodex or his contacts and connect with anybody just about. I mean, this is why it is like, this is why he's such an important figure. It's not just that he had a handful of corrupt relationships with a few key people. He cast a net far and wide. And we're still at the beginning stages of trying to put all of this together and to see it in its macro representation of these people that are manipulating reality behind the scenes. I mean, that whole thing where he's talking about setting up basically a profit, nonprofit consortium, again, based in the Virgin Islands, that would be connected to vaccines and pandemics in order to profit off of them, right? And then we go back and we look at COVID, and now we're doing the math in our brain. It's like, oh, okay. Well, if this was being talked about and was being put on the table as an economic model, did it drive reality? Is COVID an outgrowth of what? Of Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Gates, and the Gates Foundation, and all of the quote unquote scientific measures that were put into place to protect us from something that wasn't even visible. You couldn't even find it, right? That's a big one. Now, I kind of run. I'm a 2-4 splenic projector, and I run on instinct. I'm just waiting for the Erica Kirk, Jeffrey Epstein crossover to happen. It's got to be there. It has to be there. And the reason it has to be there, it's because Jeffrey Epstein trafficked in women from the Balkans and from Russia. And we know that Erica Kirk and her mother had this nonprofit, the Romanian Angel shit, right? And young girls were disappearing. And they were either showing up on the army base where they had a brothel, or who knows where they went, right? And I one time in all these beauty queens and the Trump pageant stuff, there is at least one woman in particular, and there could be more that I just didn't have access to. There's one in particular who had a relationship through Trump and the beauty pageant circuit and a personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, right? And it's on the record. So if that woman had a relationship with Trump and Jeffrey Epstein through the beauty pageant circuit, it only makes deductive, rational sense that Erica Kirk is in the same bucket because of the same alignment through Trump. Trump actually, if I'm not mistaken, right, it's through Trump where she meets Charlie Kirk, right? Erica Kirk is living in New York City, and she's supposedly doing some real estate shit. New York City, real estate, interesting occupation. I'm just waiting for the Kirk Epstein crossover. And the other, and this might be a rival faction, and it's something that a lot of people just have forgotten about. And this is the whole NXIVM thing, right? So NXIVM, Keith Raniere and the Bronfman sisters were basically running their own kind of sex cult out of New York City. And the connecting dot there is Roger Stone, who theoretically did legal work for NXIVM, right? And I believe it was the gal who's a congresswoman or whatever from New York, Kristen, I forgot what's her last name. If you don't recycle these people's brains in your head constantly, it can be, if you reach me around noon, I could probably like pull it out of my brain. But it was her father. Her father was involved in NXIVM, right? So if you think about this, and again, keeping it in the astrological mindscape, right? These are groups. These are groups of people. You've got the Epstein cabal and like what they're doing in New York. You've got the Diddy cabal and what they're doing in New York. And then you've got NXIVM, which is another cabal. And again, mostly in New York City, also other areas. Mexico is a pretty big place for. And what's interesting too is, right, Keith Raniere is also considered to be like a Jeffrey Epstein-like character, sort of this, this savant, right, who is great at like computers and programming and models and math and all the things that Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to be, famous for, well known for. And again, all happening simultaneously. And at what point do these Venn diagrams all overlap? And I bet you they do. And when you put it all together, right, and this is the big macro picture, you put all of them together, all pretty much operating either simultaneously or sort of kind of dovetailing with each other, it paints a really dark picture. Really, really dark picture. And we're just in this time of revelation now. It's happening. And I don't think there's anything that can stop it. Except maybe some kind of attack on Iran or something like that. But even that, like, they can go full Iran and it's going to have these unintended consequences. It will not go well. And keep in mind, Trump has got to deal with the midterms. And he's on a full-on frontal assault against Thomas Massie because he's pissed. He's pissed at this whole Massie thing. Anyway, you're here, you're witness to these incredible times. And life may seem mundane, but it is not mundane at all. I mean, this makes something like Watergate just seem like a, like a footsie. I mean, you'd have to go back to Nixon, I think. Not Nixon, Kennedy. You'd have to go back to Kennedy to find something as scandalous as this. All right, let's get into the chart of the moment here. Okay. Of course, there's no chart. Thank you, StreamYard. Take two. And we have the elementary school version of Astro Dienst. The hard line version. Again, if we're looking just, at the planetary conversation, let me zoom in a little bit. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These are all the Aquarian planets that have had to pass through Pluto conjuncting Jeffrey Epstein's son. And I think most of us would agree that he's alive somewhere, right? So now that, again, that aspect becomes even more active. Like, people can live on through their charts. I mean, I was going to look at Hank Aaron's chart today. This is Hank Aaron's birthday. Hammer and Hank. And people live on through their charts, either through retrospect, or there can be aspects of their charts and all of a sudden they're resurrected. Like, not literally, but figuratively resurrected. Like, why are we talking about this person now? Well, maybe it has something to do with an astrological aspect that is impacting their chart and reanimating their chart and reanimating their life. These things happen. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Right here. And we've got Mercury at 27, Venus at 23, Mars at 10, and then the Sun at 16. And they're all within hailing distance of each other. Today, we have the Moon in Libra, and as it passes through Libra, what it's going to do is it's going to go into a trine with all of these Aquarian planets. And Libra is about balance, and the Moon represents things that are unveiled, right? This is the nature of the Moon. And we have the Moon in waning gibbous. Be a good name for a band, waning gibbous. Anyway, it is in waning gibbous. And what happens with this phase of the Moon coming off the luminosity of the full moon is that, let's say you bring something to fruition and completion with the full moon. The Moon in waning gibbous has to do with tweaks and or modifications, attention to detail, whatever became illuminated with the fullness of the Moon is now going through some kind of detailed iteration or overhaul, right? So this is what's happening just position-wise with the Moon. With Libra, it's going to what? It's going to balance out the scales. It's going to balance out the scales of whatever is going on over here. So from a personal standpoint, let's make it personal today a little bit. From a personal standpoint, relations with people should be good. As long as you sort of take the high road and have namaste in your heart, right? Today could be a very, very good day. It's like the end. If you play today right, at the end of the day, you can look back and say, I had a really good day today. Well, why? Well, because it was harmonious. Things were in balance. Things were in sync, right? Things flowed. Now, there is this opposition with Saturn, Neptune. And I feel like, again, just as a personal level, right? The Saturn-Neptune opposition is fleeting because the moon is faster than that, right? The Saturn-Neptune opposition is sort of being under the microscope of authority figures who overstep their boundaries. This is how I see it. So if you happen to run into somebody like that at work, just, or in your daily life, water off the duck's back. Just let it go. Let it go. Find another topic of conversation. Don't evade it, but just find another topic of conversation. Find something that's much more of a common ground or middle ground. One of the things that Steve Bannon did in that interview, which was really interesting, and something that you can take note of, right? Like, he's having a conversation about Jeffrey Epstein's life, right? And Jeffrey Epstein is talking about how wonderful David Rockefeller is, and what a great mentor he was, and all this bullshit. And Epstein comes in and asks, Bannon comes in and asks him, what was the most difficult day of your life? And it's kind of a non sequitur, but what it does is it changes the conversation. It gets Epstein out of automatic pilot mode and causes him to think about this question. And if you're in, and again, this is all contextual, but if you're in one of these Saturn, Neptune, Moon opposition moments, you can change you can shift the axis of the conversation by asking a question that is meaningful, but is also unexpected. So if you get into something like that today, try it out. Now, you don't have to ask them, well, what was the worst day of your life? But if you're paying attention in the conversation, you can ask a person, can I ask you a question? Sure. What is it? What do you find to be the most challenging thing about showing up here every day? And it's like, all of a sudden that person's like, holy shit, nobody's ever asked me that question before. Let me think about it. And then all of a sudden they're like, it's a really good question. What I find the most challenging about being here every day is that it all feels like none of us are on the same page. And now you got a different conversation. Today is the day of the elevated conversation. It's inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. And even the trying to Uranus with the moon, right? It is the unexpected point of balance and rebalancing our interpersonal actions and communication. And I like today's chart. We've got that opposition and these squares to Uranus, right? The squares to Uranus it's like information that is kind of ground shaking, and also pay attention to the markets. And I don't know if it's funny because Jeffrey Epstein references chaos theory a lot, like at least twice in the Bannon interview. He references chaos theory. And in one of the examples of chaos theory that he uses, like a butterfly flaps its wings in China and it results in a monsoon in Africa, right? Which is the foundation of chaos theory in some ways. He kind of gets part of it wrong a little bit, like in one of the exchanges, it's like, yeah, he's really bright, but he's also a bit of a bullshit artist. I think that kind of goes hand in glove with Jeffrey Epstein. You get that Venus-Mars conjunction in Pisces, and it's like, okay, he's a slippery character, right? But this is this square with Uranus, and we have to ask ourselves, is what's coming out of these Epstein revelations having an impact on the price of Bitcoin, because it seems like there's some unusual information emanating from those files with Bitcoin? Or is it having an impact on the metals market? Now, the two may not be directly correlated, but if you look at it from a chaos theory perspective, it begins to make more sense. Like, oh, I never really thought about it in that way. But this is what we're talking about with these squares with Uranus. Again, it is the unexpected outcome of events that may not seemingly be connected, but based on this idea of chaos theory and perhaps some granular mathematical equation or algorithm do connect, and therefore we do have causation and correlation. But you have to dig a little bit deeper if you're going to do that. All right, we got about 8 minutes left. I kind of went on a bit of a rant today. So for everybody in chat who I did not greet, thank you and welcome to the show. Let's bring up our True Hemp Science star of the day. Today, by the way, is the birthday of the so-called Antichrist. This is the Antichrist birthday in 1962, and our star of the day, our True Hemp Science star of the day, is also born on this day, 1962. And that, of course, would be none other than Jennifer Jason Leigh. Before I get into her chart, this part of the show is sponsored by True Hemp Science. If you go to the comments yesterday, you'll find a happy True Hemp Science user and testifying that it is the real deal. It is the real deal. If you have had CBD before and you say, okay, right, this is your opportunity to rediscover CBD. And not just any CBD, but again, don't ask me. There are people in the chat who also have been avid and consistent users of Chris's product, both personally and for their pets. And all you got to do is type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you will get your goodie bag on top of your order. Spend $100, get the goodie bag. Over $150, you get free shipping. That's truehempscience.com. All right, let's talk about Miss Illuminati, Jennifer Jason Leigh, the daughter of Vic Morrow. Vic Morrow was an actor. He always played kind of tough, surly guys. He was in the TV series Combat. He was in the Blackboard Jungle. He dies in a mysterious helicopter accident. And it was during I think it was a Steven Spielberg movie. What was it? It was like Amazing Stories or Amazing Tales or something like that. And it's sort of like Steven Spielberg's vignettes on, I think, like the Outer Limits or the Twilight Zone. It's like the Twilight Zone. And so her father, Vic Morrow, dies in this helicopter crash. Her mother was a writer, last name Turner, and wrote a number of pretty well-received, well-known scripts. They worked together on a movie called Georgia, where Jennifer Jason Leigh and Mare Winningham played sisters, and they were like country western singers. You know, single white female, Fast Times Ridgemont High. Like this is what we know of Jennifer Jason Leigh as an actor, right? As an actor. What do we know about her, though, now on a personal level that really kind of explains her chart? It's the 9th house. And look at all those Aquarian planets in her 9th house. Jennifer Jason Leigh has come out over the last 2 years, ever since October 7th, as a raging Zionist. Like, I had no idea. Like, I always thought she was a good actress. This is somebody who threw herself into her roles. And she's about as Aquarian as it gets, right? She's born on the day of the Antichrist. And we did the Antichrist chart a couple of years ago. I had no idea that she was such an ideologue. You look at her work, oh yeah, man, she's intense. Single white female. Like, wow, yeah. Did she do that movie with Jason Patrick, which was very intense? I think it might have been about heroin. I forget. But she was, unafraid of taking challenging roles. That's what we knew about her. Kind of, America's sweetheart who gets an abortion in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But she becomes this raging ideologue. And it started off with a bunch of people from Hollywood who made a infomercial standing in support of Israel against Hamas on October 7th. Okay. But it's gone even further than that. It's like she's had this awakening. She's had this political awakening. And now, she's this raging Zionist, right? And she's become an ideologue. And this is the function of all of those Aquarian planets in her ninth house, right? Because we talked about the relationship between Aquarius and Sagittarius. And here we go. This is on full display. She goes from being, a respected actress, takes on unusual, challenging roles. She's in that movie Existence with David Cronenberg, it's kind of anybody that's in a David Cronenberg movie is, you're dealing with weird shit, right? So she was, like I said, people never doubted her chops or, she never chose easy roles. That's what we knew her for. Now we know her for something completely different. And let's face it, for the most part, at 62, or how old is she now? 64, right? 64. It's not to say that her acting days are behind her. She can still get roles. And being that she has been so devoted to the cause, I'm sure that there are well-connected filmmakers who are more than willing to continue to cast her, because she, in their minds, is on the right side of politics, history, geopolitics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not saying that it would be out of the question for her to continue to get roles. However, that said, by and large, number one, Hollywood is over. And number two, Hollywood is not kind to older actresses. It's the way it is. So I would suspect that, particularly with Pluto in conjunction with Mars, Saturn, Mercury in her chart, right? We just put Pluto right there, that the political side of Jennifer Jason Leigh will be much more on display than it was even 2 years ago. And you can kind of make a case, right, with the Pluto ingress to Mars, that it wakes up her ninth house, which in this case I believe to be very ideological and to some extent extreme. And Aquarius is an extreme sign. It's fixed. All the fixed signs are extreme. It's okay. Extreme isn't bad. You can be extremely good or extremely sexy or extremely charismatic or extremely brilliant, right? Like, it carries its own kind of baggage, but extreme isn't always bad. So I'm not denigrating the fixed signs. But again, this is a really weird chart. It's almost in Kenneth Anger territory. And she only has like one trine, and it's Chiron to Neptune. And her chart is this massive gumbo of conjunctions and squares and oppositions. Not an easy chart. Not an easy life. I'm not sure I'd want to be. I'm not sure I'd want to be in her skin. Talented as she might be, respected as an actress as she's been, this is not a person who has, like, she was married to this guy Noah Baumbach. They have a kid. In like less than a year, she's filing for divorce. And not only is she filing for divorce, but she's going all the way. She wants sole custody. Right. Like, that's really extreme. Like, okay, I'm going to have a kid and then I'm done. You're out of here. Now, maybe he deserved to be out of the picture. I don't know. Maybe he diddled the kid. I have no idea. But again, that's really extreme. Right. It's not like, okay, we'll work through this and we have a family and our family is going to, grow. No, it's like, get the fuck out. And by the way, you're going to pay me all this money and I'm going to get sole custody of the kid. That's extreme. Anyway, there you go. Jennifer Jason Leigh, your True Hemp Science star of the day. I got to go. I'm out of here. I'll see everybody on the other side over on 15 Minutes of Flame on Rumble. In the meantime, have a great day. I hope you found today's show enlightening and at the very least entertaining for entertainment purposes only. Hit like, subscribe. I think I had a net of -1 last month on the subscription side. So at the very least, I've stopped the bleeding. It'd be nice to have a few more people come aboard. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. God bless you all. Chattaria. As always, you're the best. Bye for now.